Welcome in our MOOC course, Modern Indian Writings in English Translations. In our previous class, we have discussed about a short story named A Season of No Return by Gurdial Singh and translated by Rana Nair. As we discussed the plot or the summary of the story, in today's class we are going to discuss about the themes that has been highlighted by Gurdial Singh in his short story A Season of No Return. As we all know that Gurdial Singh is a very monumental figure in Punjabi literature. His short story A Season of No Return highlights many themes hidden in the so-called everyday life. The first very important theme of the story is the tradition versus the modernity. The morning ritual of the daughter-in-law and of Santok's mother. The story opens by establishing a stark contrast between traditional expectations and modern routine. In a traditional Punjabi household, the morning greetings are in often very intimate and communal start of the day. However, here in the story, the daughter-in-law morning routine is very mechanical and repetitive. She enters with tea and repeats the very same words in her characteristic sweet manner, and that she used for a year. Maji Pranam, it's 6 o'clock. This repetition signifies a modern clock world existence devoid of genuine warmth. She leaves immediately, dragging her chappals along, without checking if Corey is awake or not, without waiting from any kind of response from Corey. This behavior highlights a shift from the traditional relational focus of a joint family to the functional, time-driven efficacy of modern urban life, where duties are performed with punctuality rather than affectionately. The generation is a very important factor in the story, and also the generation gap. The tension between tradition and modernity is palpable in the interactions involving the grandson Kaka. For Corey, the child represents lineage and emotional connection. When Santok hands Kaka to her, her heart danced in joy, and she invokes traditional blessings, breaking into childish prattle. However, the modern structure of the household limits her role. The daughter-in-law manages the child's schedule very strictly, appearing at specific time like 35 minutes past 7 to demand, "Please Maji, give Kaka his feed." The feeding is merely a task and not a responsibility. A significant thematic conflict arises from Santok's marriage, which defies traditional caste boundaries. Corey reflects on how Santok married of his own accord, disagreeing the wishes of his parents. The clash between the old village values and the son's modern choice of his own right. This illustrates the disruption between modernity brings to established social hierarchies. Santok represents the modern individual who prioritizes personal choice and settling in only with her, while Corey embodies the traditional community that views such break from the social norms as a loss of honor and identity in the society. The value of labor and leisure. In the village, Corey's identity was tied to her labor and contribution to the household. In the city, modernity is presented as a life of leisure, which Corey finds very suffocating. When she sees huge pile of unwashed dishes, her instinct is to wash them. However, her son and daughter-in-law have strictly forbidden her from doing such chores, insisting that she must never do them. This modern definition of so called care, enforced leisure, clashes with her traditional value system where work equals worth. By removing her ability to labor, to inadvertently strip her of her purpose, making the modern conveniences of the house feel very restrictive. The character of the daughter in law epitomizes the modernism. She is an educated woman, contrasting sharply with the rural woman represented by Corey in the story. She is a professional college teacher, while her husband is an engineer. Her interactions are very polite but distant, marked with a smile of satisfaction when duties are fulfilled. Such smiles are pasted upon her face when leaving for work. Corey struggles to connect with this polished exterior, finding the sameness of the sweet words, creating a barrier that traditional, perhaps rougher emotionally honesty would not. The concept of paradise in the story. The story ironically posits the modern city as a paradise to highlight its shortcomings compared to the traditional village life. Corey initially views the strange land as a paradise because of the material abundance and the daughter in law's obedience. The house is an office quarter as good as a bungalow with everything one needs. Santok asks, Maji, don't you like this season? Implying that the comfort of the city is superior to the harsh village weather. However, this paradise lacks the organic vitality of tradition. The sameness of the modern environment contrasts negativity with the dynamic, albeit difficult, rhythms of traditional life, suggesting that material perfection does not equate to the emotional connection of the village life. Traditional village life is characterized by deep, often intrusive community bonds, where modern city life is marked by isolation and superficiality. Corey attempts to recreate community by visiting the Gurudwara and meeting a woman from Jalandhar. However, their connection is based on complaining about modern daughter in laws, where Corey refused to participate. Furthermore, when a neighbor asks Corey, Are you feeling all right? She also screams at her own son in the same breath, showing a disjoint distracted from of care. Corey chooses not to respond, retreating inside, signaling her inability to navigate these fragmented modern social scripts compared to the cohesive village community she misses. The story concludes with a triumph of modern convenience over traditional obligation. Santok decides to send his mother back because her presence and specifically her illness threatens the efficient running of their modern lives. He anticipates problems and decides to engage a maid instead of caring for his mother personally. This decision underscores the transactional nature of the modern household. The season of no return implies that once the traditional element, the mother, is removed from the story, the modern unit can return to its own self contained, emotionless efficiency. Santok's final lightness of being. Santok's final lightness of being after she leaves confirms that tradition has become a burden to the modern psyche. With this, we would like to go into another theme very poignant in the short story, that is psychological displacement and the concept of identity. Corey's psychological displacement stems from a total loss of agency within the foreign land of her son's home. In the village, she was likely a matriarch authority. Here, she is only a passive recipient of care. The daughter in law anticipates her needs perfectly that Corey has never had to spell out for anything she needs. While intended as kindness, this renders Corey invisible to her. She is served everything without lifting a finger, which leads to a crisis of identity. She asks herself, what is paradise? Trying to rationalize her situation. But the lack of agency leaves her feeling restive apparently for no reason. This physical manifestation of anxiety. Corey's displacement is not just mental but physical as well. The environment itself seems to reject her, or she rejects is somatically. The anxiety of waiting for daughter in law's footsteps creates a strange dread in her eyes. This psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms, wave of nausea sweeping over her, and insistent bout of cough. Later, when she tries to eat, the very first morsel got stuck in her throat, and she suffers a sudden pain in her back. This physical ailment are psychosomatic responses to her displacement. Her body is reacting to the suffocation of her identity in a space where she does not belong. Corey's identity as a mother is undermined by the professionalized care she receives. Santok and his wife treats her more like a fragile object than a parent. When she is ill, Santok brings a sarso-colored tablet, practically feeds it to her, then whistles to distract the child, conflating the care of his mother with the care of his son. Corey is infantilized in this environment. She is not the provider of care, but the mere receiver of the care. In this house, Corey loses her voice. The environment is dominated by the sound of the other tip-tap of chappals and the sound of the scooter, the neighbors screaming, while Corey remains largely silent or speaks in childish prattle. When the neighbor asks if she is well, something crosses Corey's mind, and she decides not to respond, choosing silence over any kind of engagement. This silence is defense mechanism against a world she cannot understand. Even when she is overhears Santok discussing about sending her away, she feels jiggled but does not confront him, internalizing the rejection and further erasing her presence in the household dynamics. Corey's identity is deeply tied to her relationship with Santok. But in the city, she is a stranger. Although he is spotless in his white kurta pajama, Santok in his interactions are very clinical to his mother. He acts out the role of a dutiful son bringing medicine and water, but lacks any kind of emotional dependence on her mother. When Cory expresses a desire to return to the village, he dismisses her feelings with logic. What are you going to do there? And cites his brother's letters. He fails to see her psychological distress, interpreting her well being solely through the lens of material comfort. This emotional disconnection displaces Cory further as she realizes that she cannot communicate in this modern society. Cory sees a reflection of her own displacement in the maid, yet she is barred from connecting with her. The maid, who has a slipshod manner and a difficult life, presents the world of struggle and reality that Cory understands. Cory sympathizes with the maid's plight, a husband who squandered all his earnings. Cory yearns to help the maid, to share their joy and sorrows. By forbidding Cory to help the maid, the family enforces class barriers that isolate Cory, preventing her from finding a mirror of her own identity as a working woman. The text explicitly mentions a strange dread lurking in Cory's eyes. This dread is a psychological symptom of displacement. It is triggered by the domestic sounds of the daughter-in-law, suggesting that Cory feels like an intruder in another woman's domain. She stares blankly at the walls, her ears attuned to footfalls, living in a state of hypervigilance rather than relaxation. Ultimately, Cory's displacement is complete when she accepts her removal without any protest. When Santok announces he has booked her seat on the train, she is stunned, but quickly retreats into a self-sacrificing role. She says, "Son, it's up to you. If you are finding it difficult, I won't mind staying. But this is only a formality." She recognizes that she has become a problem that has to be solved by her own son. There is an illusion of progress in the story. The story creates a very powerful critique of the idea of progress. The city home is described with terms of abundance, a paradise, a bungalow, a place with plentiful of everything. Yet this paradise functions like a cage for Cory. The abundance does not pleases her, rather it paralyzes her. The cleanliness of the city stands in contrast to the dung cake reality of the village, representing a sanitized version of life that lacks any soul. The daughter-in-law's room, the bathroom, the towel on the peg are all neat and organized. Santok dresses in quotes, spotless white kurta pajama. This hygiene is a part of the illusion of the progress, a life scrubbed clean of dirt and struggles. Progress is often associated with stability, but here stability is portrayed as stagnation. Santok explains that season always remained the same due to the sea. He frames this as a positive, something people in Punjab yearns for. However, to Cory, this sameness is very unnatural. She misses the cycle of life, the unbearable heat of May, June, and the bitter cold of winter. Technology and machinery facilitate the illusion of progress in the story. The scooter is a recurring symbol. Santok kicked hard to start it, and the couple speeds away, leaving the child to the grandmother behind. The noise of the scooter dominates the soundscape, silencing the human interaction in the story. The family maintains a facade of happiness that Corey eventually sees through. The daughter in law's smile are described very mechanically. Shapely lips suddenly blossomed into a smile, or smiles are pasted upon their faces. This performative happiness is part of the modern social contract, the illusion that everything is fine. Corey notes that the daughter in law's words are sweet, but she tires of the sameness of them. The illusion of progress demands this constant veneer of pleasantness, masking the underlying estrangement and sadness that pervades the house, which Corey only fully senses when her departure is imminent. In the progressive society, emotional distress is treated as a medical problem. When Corey feels the weight of her displacement, Santok immediately responds to it and gets the medicine. He brings a doctor who says there is absolutely nothing to worry about. The medical establishment fails to diagnose Corey's true ailment, homesickness and loss of purpose. The illusion here is that science and medicine can only fix everything, but reducing her existential crisis to a fever or a cough that can be treated with a sarso colored tablet. The modern world invalidates her emotional reality. Santok, Corey's son, embodies the success story of the village boy who made it big, an engineer with a bungalow. Yet the story subtly undermines this success. He is disconnected from his roots, unable to understand his mother, and ultimately cold. His Bapu, the father, sees through this, telling him sarcastically, "Don't you worry about me. I could always go to the Gurdwara." This suggests that the father recognizes the son's progress as a form of abandonment. Santok's success has cost him his ability to talk straight or connect deeply, leaving him shivering with cold at the end of the story despite the lack of clouds. The phrase, "we will manage somehow," exposes the fragility of the modern setup. Santok uses it to dismiss his mother's offer to stay. It reveals that the progress of their lives is a tightrope walk of scheduling and paid help. They plan to engage a maid for the household to replace his mother. This substitution, made for mother, is the ultimate indictment of their progress. It reduces human relationships to functional roles that can be filled only by employees. The illusion in that they are independent and successful enough, but in reality they are merely managing a logistic system where a family member are interchangeable with hired help. With this, memory and nostalgia plays a very important role in the story. Memory serves as Corey's escape from the sterile present. Her nostalgia grows into a nagging obsession, manifesting in vivid dreams of her village. These dreams are not just visuals, but tactile and auditory. She sees the open courtyard, hears the loud guffaws of Gyana's children, and sees their hands dripping with fresh cow dung. This imagery contrasts sharply with the neat towel and cup of tea in the city. The dream world is alive and messy, representing the vitality she craves. Her waking up blubbering indicates that this nostalgia is very painful for her to bear. Nostalgia leads Corey to idealize the other daughter in law, Gyana's wife. In reality, this woman is rough. Dung cake like face, short statured, solid body. She has a loud, robust voice and threatens the children. Yet Corey's memory transformed these harsh traits into something desirable. She recalls the scene almost like a movie. Hearing the soft voice of the daughter in law asking for help. This memory serves as a foil to the city daughter in law's polished, sweet perfection. Corey's nostalgia is deeply rooted in the sensory experience of the seasons, which are absent in the city. She remembers the extremes, the heat of May June that one yearns for endless glasses of water, and the winter cold that drives one to sit next to the fire. These memories represent a life lived in engagement with nature. The memory of the seasons is a memory of something very comfortable, relieved, and warmth. In the city's changeless climate, she feels numb. Nostalgia in the story is also linguistic. The city operates in Hindi, the neighbor, the maid, or a formal Punjabi. Corey remembers the specific dialect and tone of the village. She recalls Gyana's wife saying, "Nay, Bibiji, just be careful." This "Nay, Bibiji" carries an intimacy that the city daughter-in-law's Maji Pranam lacks. The memory of these voices brings Corey to spontaneous laughter, which she has to suppress in the quiet city house. Corey's memory of Melu and Karmi, Gyana's children, highlight the difference in childhood between the village and the city. She remembers them frolicking, running around the manger, and chasing each other. This is active, chaotic, and dirty play. In contrast, her city grandson Kaka is impatient, confined to a lap, or staring wide-eyed at a scooter. Corey's nagging obsession with the village suggests a fear that she is losing her grip on reality. The city environment is so overpowering in its sameness that she must clinch to these memories of remembers who she is. The flashback to the village is not just a dream yard, rather it is an act of preservation. When she wakes up drenched in perspiration and reciting Vaheguru Vaheguru, it is a desperate attempt to ground herself in her spiritual and cultural identity after the displacement of her dreams. The nostalgia is a survival mechanism against the brown stump of the city existence. Memory allows Corey to revisit a time when she had authority. In her dream, she ranted at the children, "Why don't you stop it now?" She is an active participant, a disciplinary, and a grandmother who shapes behavior. But in the city life, she is reduced just merely to as a maid. The title, "A Season of No Return," casts a shadow over Corey's nostalgia. While she physically returns to the village at the end, the story implies that something has irrevocably changed. The nostalgia she feels is for a time and connection that might be lost in the foreign land of modernity. Santok's decision to send her back in the practical, not sentimental. The season she spent in the city has highlighted the gap between her memories and the new reality of her son's life. Her return is not a triumph of memory, but a retreat from a future that has no place for characters like Corey. The city is consistently described as a space that is fundamentally alien to Corey. It is a strange land to her. The auditory landscape of the city reinforces its unfamiliarity. Corey is isolated by language. The bathroom serves as a specific site of unfamiliarity and anxiety. It is a modern private space that Corey struggles to navigate. The most painful, unfamiliar space is the emotional distance that she suffers from her son. Santok, once her intimate family, has become a sahib figure. He speaks in anxious but soft tones to his wife, plotting Corey's departure. Corey has to prick her ears to overhear him, indicating she is now an outsider and not a parent to him. In the village, the social norms are clear. Neighbors visits grandmothers, raise children, and the daughter-in-law serves mother-in-laws. In the city, these norms are inverted or absent, which makes Corey feel more suffocated in the city life. With this, we end the discussion on themes that has been discussed by Gurdyal Singh in his short story, A Season of No Return.